I can't wait any longer.
Let's go.
I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
Damn, we need to make this thing even.
I can't believe it's you. Don't tell anyone. I'm not ready for this. Don't tell anyone. Thank you.
Hello and welcome all you Breen Weavers. Yes, welcome to episode 9 of My Scene with Breen, the only podcast dedicated to Las Vegas director Neil Breen. I'm your host, Neil Knipe, and yet again I'll be chatting to those lucky few who have worked with Neil either in front or behind the camera, in the hope we can unravel a few of the mysteries that surround the interview-shy filmmaker. Later on, we'll be hearing from Andres L Porras, who was Double Down's director of photography, but first we'll be going to the other extreme end of Breen's cinematic timeline as I talk to Emily Brixey. Emily is a very rare participant in Neil's body of work, as she's one of the few people who has contributed behind the scenes in the latter part of his career. Emily was the CGI artist for what quickly became one of the most iconic scenes in the Neil Breen canon. Yes, just a mere 15 minutes into his most recent film, Cade, the Tortured Crossing, our protagonist, played by Neil himself of course, goes toe-to-toe with a computer-generated white tiger. Emily talked to me about getting the gig over Twitter, the complexities of animating a fight scene, and talking to one of her idols, the Breen machine himself. One big difference to Emily compared to our previous guests is that she was well aware of Neil's films before working with him. In fact, she describes herself as a big fan. Let's find out more. Where were you before your work on Cade, the Tortured Crossing?
I mostly did 2D animation. I had gone to school to University of Utah primarily for 2D animation, but obviously I want the sky's the limit when making content. So I was I had taken classes in 3D animation and stuff like that, even though my focus was more 2D. I had a friend tell me that Neil Breen was looking for a 3D artist, and we were looking at it because we were big Neil Breen fans. So I was like, oh, okay, I'd love to do that for a first 3D job, for freelance.
How big a fan are we talking? We're talking, we've seen all his films.
Yeah, I had seen all of his previous films. I was well aware of his work. I didn't know what the new one was going to be about then. The tweet only mentioned CGI artist, and they were like, you should just inquire about it, see if you can do it. And I was like, okay, yeah. So the whole process was, he said, oh, can you show, it's a tiger in a scene. So can you show me some animation of a tiger in a live action scene? But I just thought a big cat would do. So I just looked for some free models on Gumroad. I think it was more a lion. And so I just was like, here's the lion in the backyard. Here's me walking around and it's roaring or whatever. But he was like, no, it has to be a tiger. It has to be a white tiger in the back, in a live action scene. And I was like, okay, so I searched up for a tiger or whatever. And I had to make it white in the texture paint. So I was really proud that I did that. And then I showed that and he was like, okay, that's what I want. But yeah, he specifically wanted examples of a white tiger too when I applied for the job.
Were you aware at the time of any competition? Was there any explanation as to why you were picked over other people?
I have no clue. I wasn't aware about what other people were saying because I'm not the most active on Twitter. But since this was a job, this was the one thing I was talking about. I was talking to him basically through direct messages only. I didn't really comment on a post. It was only through direct messages that we were talking through this. And even through some of the process, I would say even after I was offered the job, it was mainly through Twitter for a while. And then I had an email to contact him through, but I don't know if it's just because his emails I don't know his situation, if his email has a lot of emails in it and it's just easier through Twitter. But
at this point, is he quite conversational or is it very just kind of direct?
It was more direct when I was applying. And then when he called to see oh, like for rates and like what the project was about, more like concrete what it was about. I would say he was more descriptive of what the scene he explained the story, and he was like, I was very like happy how passionate he was about it. It's really fun to see people passionate about their projects, because like before I was working more for like corporations and stuff like that for their social media ads, and it's just like, we just need to tell people to buy these potato chips. And I was like, okay. So it's really fun when people are passionate about their projects, and I definitely got that. He talked a lot about like the story wanted for it, but the thing was that I didn't know the context of the tiger in the movie. I was just kind of told that the tiger was a big part. And that was like, oh no, I like, I really hope I do well on it.
Were you told about the plot of the film or any of the characters or how, the tiger would be involved or anything?
I from what I remember at that point, it was it was about Cade from the previous movie, about that character having to fight off certain stuff that, meant a lot to him. Yeah, I hadn't even seen the movie till like a while after. And then I was like, okay, like I thought like the tiger would be later on in the film, because I was told that was like a big part of the movie. Like it might have changed after, when they were editing the film, but like a big like turning point in the film. So I was like, it's already here, 30 minutes in.
What pulls you in then with Neil Breen's films? And are you watching these films ironically or unironically? How where does your enjoyment come from with the films?
I find them entertaining. Since I didn't know him before, I didn't know what his direct message was from the films. I just found them entertaining, and I think they're serious, and I like them a lot. And I get most of the time the messages they're conveying, and even if I don't, I just take it as higher art. I just like projects where people are really passionate about what they're making, and they're just making it to make it. And it's not like, we got to make this for the shareholders, it's just, I like indie films like that.
Was there a certain amount of apprehension from you getting involved, putting your work out there and being concerned about how, it could be judged or that people would mock it as they do these films sometimes?
I think I was just happy to have a project to work on. I didn't care. I was like, I like Neil Breen. I'd be more than happy to, heck, if I had the opportunity to work on another film, I'd totally do it again. Just, I like his work. I find the films entertaining. I think that as long as people are happy when they watch them, then that's fine. I'm not working for like Pixar where they're like, we have 2 years to make this. I think I had 3 months max and most of it was just rendering the scene. I think I had my computer working day and night, and I had to set timers throughout the night. But like after a certain amount of frames, it would stop. And so I timed it to where I would know when it was stopped. So I would wake up in the middle of the night and start it again. And like, I felt so bad because I don't think he understood that. And I was trying so hard, and he's like, you missed this frame. And I'm like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Like, here it is. I redid it because the tiger in the movie has like this thing in Maya called the program for animation. Sorry, I'm getting technical, as like XGen for. So every single strand of hair has to be rendered through the computer. And it's just, it's a lot for any computer. It's going to be like a little bit of time to get the perfect quality out of it.
So you've animated the tiger in the computer. You've got the movements. You've got all that side. So what's the rendering part then?
So basically, your computer's not going to show the movie quality when you animate, because that would be a lot on your computer. It's basically exporting each individual frame of the animation out to them. It even like kind of hurt because I did it with the green screen background first, and they were like, oh no, we want like the PNG clear background. And I was like, oh no, I gotta do this again, I'm so sorry. But
so to do that, I think it's roughly about a minute and a half, is it, that scene? A minute or so, is it?
Yeah, I think the total time that I was told in the beginning was around 2 minutes. I believe there's the tiger attack scene and then the tiger walking scene, and then I think it ended up being more like maybe 2 minutes and 30.
You've got to keep your computer on permanently as it renders. And how long did that scene take to render then?
So I think it was hard because I would render it, and then they would find you. I say like Neil Breen would be like, well, I don't really like the way the tiger moves like that. And I'm like, okay, it's gonna be another maybe be like a week for a scene to be completely rendered out. But I would always show like the view. It's called the viewport, basically the lower resolution one. I would show that one and be like, this is what the animation looks like. It won't be like movie quality, but this is what it's gonna look like. So then I could get that approved. But that happens all the time if you export a final copy out. Like oftentimes we'll get it back and say like this needs to be changed. It was only hard because it was a very nice high quality model that he had bought and that I was animating with, so it just took longer for that model specifically to be rendered out.
And were you given the chance to collaborate and discuss with Neil beforehand the movements and the choreography of that scene? Or were you just kind of given the footage and there you go, run with it?
I first was given the footage and then just said like, when Neil, looks like he's being attacked, that's when he's attacked. There's going to be when he's rolling on the ground and the tiger's going to attack him. And I was like, okay. It was hard because tigers usually go for the neck. They don't fight. But so I had to think like, okay, like how does a tiger... Oh, I was told it was a shapeshifter. That's right. Before animating it, that it was a man who turned into a tiger. And so I was like, okay, how does a man who turned into a tiger, how would he fight another man? So I was trying to think of that, about a lot of swatting and stuff. I thought like claw wise, the tiger would have its claws out, but Neil said like, no, I want more like forward, the wrist. And I was like, okay, because he didn't want it to seem like he was playing with the tiger.
So did that make it slightly frustrating for you to a certain extent? Your hands are tied a little bit, as in, you didn't get any kind of a say in this. You literally had to go with what you were given with the moves.
Yeah, I would say that the fight scene, there wasn't really something he specifically wanted, just that to show that they were fighting, and that when he's on the ground, the tiger's attacking him on the ground and basically attacking him a lot. But so I had to, just kind of improvise on that.
Did you know what the background was going to be, whether it was night or day, where the light was coming from?
No, that was another thing. So in the animation program, I put the lighting myself on the tiger. Usually, like in a big studio, an animator wouldn't do that, but I did it because I was like, okay, I'm assuming they're going to be like, I think he did say they were going to be outside in like general daylight. So I was like, okay, I'll light it so it looks like it's in general daylight. But then he said, it's too dark. I want this bright white. I want this tiger bright white so the tiger doesn't have like any shadows on it, which a white tiger would normally have a bit of gray for shadow, but he was like, I don't want any of that. But that's his vision. That's, he's the ruler of the movie. So I wasn't going to be like, well, it might look a little less flat if it had some shadow in it. And I think for the story, he wants it bright white to be pure white. But I did not know what the background was going to be. I was not shown what the background was going to be.
And was there a lot of kind of direction from Neil as the process went on? Was there a lot of good kind of direct feedback, which was helpful and useful?
I would say that most of the feedback was like, oh, I just want the tiger to be a bit more vicious. I want it to stand like a different way. I want the arms to come up more. There might be like if I look at it as an animator now, there's probably is some broken poses in the model where probably it overstretches a little bit too much, but it looks from a distance more impactful, more actiony. But I don't think because it's hard because like the tiger model is realistic, but I also think the rigging on it, which basically is all the bones in it to animate, is more meant for realism. So that was kind of hard to work with too. Like they're not gonna totally bring down their hand from way up above, but I was working with it and made it as best as I could at the time. I definitely learned a lot from this project though, and what I can do better as an animator. And I've been trying to improve my skills and stuff like that. So, but I was like really proud to even like have a job on this movie and be able to do the fight scene. And it was fun though.
And was all the communication via email or did you meet?
I unfortunately never got to meet him. I wish I did. I wish I had like the business trip to go to Vegas and see him, but most of it was Twitter, email, and then there was like maybe a couple phone calls. The phone calls were great because then you could tell he was really passionate about the project. It was really nice to talk to, and he was really friendly in that way and excited about his project. So that was always fun.
They say don't meet your heroes and things like that. How did you feel kind of talking to him and getting to know him a little bit?
I think he's definitely genuine from his movies. You get that kind of sense. He's still pretty like mysterious in his personal life because we didn't talk much about anything outside of the movie. But passionate about his projects and just like I feel like talking to like the movie actor on the screen.
The big question, which I'm sure you've been asked before, do we know who this tiger is, this lady in white? Do we know who she is?
Now, all I was told at the beginning is that it was a big pivotal plot point and that somebody turns into the tiger. I'm assuming that it's a character that is antagonistic to the plot, but then after the fight, they make amends and then now they're an ally from what I saw in the movie. So I think maybe she was evil and now she's not. She sees the light after fighting Breen. That's my best speculation because like I know he told me that this is a real fight. They're not like playing around or something like that. So that's hard when I'm thinking that and then I see the movie and I'm like, okay, like I have the same thought too, like is this a real fight? Like but maybe that's he was telling me that so then I would animate it like that, not knowing the background for it.
Where did you see the film? What was that like, that experience seeing your work up there on the screen?
I saw it at a local theater who was showing the movie because I don't think he was sending out the DVDs yet. So I got to watch it with a bunch of friends and family. And, it was hard because they had never seen a Breen movie, most of them. So it was like, this is going to be a little bit more artsy, indie. It's not going to be your typical average movie. And we just had a lot of fun during it.
And what was the audience reaction to the tiger scene?
Okay, so it was kind of embarrassing, but like the people they did like a presentation before and they were like, yeah, like this girl animated the tiger and pointed me out and I was like, okay. So I don't think I got like a real reaction. I think everybody was just like, yeah, you did it, at the end. I was hoping to stay in the background because I did want to see kind of like real reactions to what people said or saw because also before that I only saw like little snapshots from Reddit of what the scene looked like. That was my first reaction, like, oh, okay, that's the background, That's what I was lighting.
Are you proud of the work that you did? Is there anything that you would change about it?
I definitely wish that I had more time, or I definitely think I could do better now, knowing the skills that I've been working on. But for that time, I worked with the time that I had to animate that scene and what I knew from the movie, but I definitely don't regret ever working on it. I really liked the movie a lot. I understood it was a Neil Breen movie, so I wasn't going to be like, oh, it's going to be like, frame by frame perfect Pixar animation. I understood it was an indie film.
And where are you now then? Are you working on any projects or, you said you felt you learned a fair bit working with Neil on this. What did you take with you?
I definitely learned that I do like working with other animators on a team because it's nice to get feedback that way because sometimes it's hard in the technical aspect to talk about animation stuff with like a client if they don't understand like, oh, do you think that on timing and just like system stuff? Did like mentorships with women in animation and stuff like that about how I can improve and like people to talk to on like it was hard because I got my portfolio reviewed by a guy at Ubisoft who's like we're working on games there and he's like, oh, I would take the tiger out. I was like, okay, that was hard to take, but okay. At least my newer stuff he liked, but I mostly do personal projects and then I'll do like freelance work for like companies, whether it's motion graphics or 2D or not a lot of people ask for like 3D in the corporation sense.
How do you feel about your status now in the Neil Breen canon? You're one of the few people who's kind of contribute to these films behind the scenes. The tiger scene is probably now one of the most iconic scenes, in out of his films.
Feels nice, but I know looking at videos of the credits rolling, and then it's always like a yay for Neil Breen, and then like I think the other individual's name that comes up, we get like a boo, but I feel like it fits with the fandom. I don't get like hurt. I'm just like, yeah, like he's cooler than me. Neil Breen's cooler than me, so he can get a yay. But who's that? Get her out of here. No.
So there you go. Next time you watch that fan favourite scene, just remember all the hours and hours of rendering that went into it. And poor old Emily getting up in the early hours of the morning to make sure it was all going smoothly. If you'd like to follow Emily, or if you have any open opportunities for a 2D, 3D animator, 3D modeler, then you can find her on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the username FugloArt. That's FUGGLOART. She's also on LinkedIn as well. And of course, I have nothing but gratitude to Emily for taking the time to talk to me there. Thank you. As promised, it's now time to go back 2 decades to the start of Neil Breen's career and his debut feature, Double Down. You may remember that back in episode 5, I talked to Nick Fry, a camera operator on the film. Nick mentioned a few times the DP, Andres, and suggested that things between him and Neil didn't always run smoothly. Well, here is the man himself. Director of photography on 2005's Double Down, Andres L Porras. Will he be throwing water on some of this fiery gossip, or maybe gasoline? When was the last time you saw Double Down?
Wow. I saw it like maybe 2 years after we shot on it because it took a while. I know he went through like 3 editors, and one of those editors is my friend, and he was the one that showed me the cut. And I was surprised for what I remember on the sites, on the script, the way it was edited, it was completely different. I had a professor in NYU that told me that when you make a movie, you have 3 movies. You write the movie that you want, you shoot the movie that you can afford, and then you edit the movie that you have. He is the living representation of that thing because he wrote it. We shot it. I was so when the last day I was like, "Are you sure we got everything?" Because I don't know. And then when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, I don't remember that like that on the script. So there was a lot of. And it was very artsy. Scenes were not built the traditional way.
Is it just because you kind of didn't have the time, or is it kind of because you didn't want to watch it? Was there a certain kind of apprehension to watching it again?
No. I'm proud of what I did. We shot it on film, so I'm happy.
So where were you then before meeting Neil? Because I believe you brought on a lot of the crew, or most of the crew.
Yeah. And some of them actually got pissed at me. I was in Vegas. I was actually living in Vegas. I got somebody recommended me to him, and he contacted me. I took the approach that I always take, minus the script, and then we started talking about what he needed it and how it was, and then we just went from there. And I told him what the crew was going to be and how it was going to be handled. He was very not a very what's the word, polite. I should say. He was very rude to some of the crew members, especially the female ones. There was a scene in a pool where he wanted the male actor and the female actor to be naked. And he never really had done naked scenes. And so he literally just pasted skin color bandage and things like that in the male areas and the female areas. And he thought that was enough, that was okay. But he never really prepared the crew for that. And they were female. Like I had a female assistant that she never really came. I had to switch him. I think he was never really a very easy person to talk to in those instances. And then he really, really didn't know how to talk to the crew. Like I can handle it because being a DP and having to deal with directors and ADs, I have a tough skin. So you're not going to insult me. I'm not going to, if you scream at me, you still have lunch. We still have dinner. I don't care. I mean, I don't take it personal, but that's the nature of my position. But ACs don't have to take that because they don't have to take it from the director. The communication from the director is minimal. They will take it from me because I won't talk to them like that. But they expect to be talked by me, not him. And a lot of times he will tell him to do things that it wasn't on the description.
Where did this rudeness come from? Was it, do you think, just a natural thing, or was it due to the pressure? Was it the pressure of the shoot?
I think it was the lack of knowledge of a proper management of a logistical location shooting. Pressure, I mean, shooting movies is not any other different than having to deal with clients changing the blueprints, and we actually talk about that. I told him one day, he's like, listen, that's not the way you talk to an AC. If you have something to say to them, talk to me and I'll talk to them. And but don't talk to them like that. I mean, just talk to me and I'll relay the message. Unless you really have something to, I mean, they're humans, you can talk to them, but talk to them like humans. They're not robots. They're not, servants. And but I don't think it was the pressure. I don't remember having that much pressure because I don't think he knew. We didn't have long days. We didn't have like weird days. As a matter of fact, I remember one time we run out of daylight and we had to do a whole bunch of dialogue. And we were kind of talking about how to do the dialogue. And I kind of told him, listen, let's do this. Let's get to your house. And then I put an Apple box and put the camera on top of the Apple box. So it's lower than the actors. And so then we should aim up to the sky. So we don't have any buildings. And when I saw it, that was one of the things that, because those things got spliced. So we went through the script and like, we didn't have the dialogue. We don't have the dialogue. And so we shot it with the different actors on this, looking at the sky. And if it was blue sky, better. That way we don't have continuity with clouds. And it's Vegas, it's blue all the time. And I remember that day, we just did that. We just shot that. And I remember thinking that it was a very non-theatrical way of doing something. But then like maybe 6 years later or 5 years later, I was doing a movie in New Mexico where we run on the same problem. And I told the director, it's like, what if we do this? And he's like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, let's do it. And so we did it for one scene, though. It wasn't like that. And when I end up editing that movie, and I remember editing, it's like, oh, son of a bitch, it did work. It was a very ambitious, but it was a nice challenge. There were a couple of desert scenes that it was a little bit more challenging than others because he didn't bring water. I remember the last day, he handed me my last check. I actually had to go to his house. And then he handed me the last check. And it was kind of like, okay, bye, see you done. He closed the door. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that was it. I guess I'm not needed anymore. It's like, well, not you, it's me, I guess.
Did he say, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this? Or did he just give you free rein? He just said, you go off and get what we need?
No, he did. There were limitations on how many bodies we needed budget-wise, but no, I mean, once I told them, well, I need an AC, I need a focus puller, I need a gaffer, and I need at least one electric, grip electric, and then we had a makeup girl that I brought in. Then we had to change because again, he was a bit creepy. But I can, that she came over to me and says, yeah, he just looks weird. He looks me weird, and he doesn't really talk to, makeup was also because as a director, I get involved with makeup too, because it's part of how I needed to be looked in front of the camera. But he was just very, and then he not only didn't know how to communicate, then he didn't know how to express that things were not communicated the right way. So things didn't get done the right way.
So how was the project described to you?
I knew I was going to be the DP, but I don't think it was described like, I don't think the description was given to me where I finished the show and I was like, oh yeah, this is what I thought it was going to be. I do remember the first meeting. I do remember telling him what my views were and what I wanted to handle it. I think he felt that it was professional enough and he had enough structure for him, didn't have to worry about that. There were a lot of rewrites.
Were those rewrites to do with budget or changing location or
logistics? Yeah,
logistics. Yeah,
it was logistics.
Have you any idea at all what the budget was?
That's the thing that I never saw budget. He used to pay us personally, and he used to handle like the checks to each one, And it wasn't a typical production where we were there for like 20 days or 14 days. It was 2 days, 1 week, 3 days the other week, maybe 1 week passed by, and then we didn't. Yeah.
What does a DP do on a movie set?
Oh, on a normal movie set, or on that movie set?
Both.
The director of photography is in charge of what you as the viewer see on the screen. That's not only had to do with lenses, lighting, but also what is in terms of how the story needs to be driven to the viewer. So if I need you to just be looking at one person, then doesn't matter what's happening on the background, I still need you to be looking at that person. Also props, how the props get handled on the screen, what the lenses and the different ways to move the camera. I'm in charge of that. Not necessarily, well, in my case, I'm a Steadicam operator. I can do dolly. I have no life, so I get a lot of stuff. And a lot of times I'm also involved in post for coloring and the final look of the movie. For Double Down, there was no props. There is very few wardrobe. Actors sometimes show up dressed the way they were, and they were just given just dress black or just, and then they would dress up with whatever they want. And sometimes it was gray, but it was dark. It was blacking out. So it was like, that's fine. I didn't say that, he did. And there was really no way for me to control the story aspect of the image because I never had a full script. So a lot of times it was me looking at the sites and just hoping that that's what I was doing. So there was no lens matching. There was no. One of my biggest fear was, am I breaking the line? Because I didn't know what the next scene was going to be, or whatever scenes we were doing. That's the one that I was handling, but I don't know how it was going to be next scene, previous scene, and all that.
Well, did you ever bring this up? Did you ever approach out with Neil and say, "Look, I feel day. My job is harder because of this"? So what was the response you got to that?
That was the way he wanted to do it. And at one point, especially after like maybe the 4th or 5th discussion that we had about it, I was like, okay, whatever, I'll do it. I mean, one of the disadvantages of being a DP, you really don't have the luxury to say I quit. You kind of stuck to the end. My background is filmmaking, actually film. So that's why I started making movies. I mean, I shot my first professional movie when I was 18 years old. I shot my first movie when I was 12 years old. So the people that actually guide me into the art form, they told me being a DP is not a job, it's a responsibility. So once you take the role, then I can really say, and it's very rare that you get a DP fired because everybody on the production knows the role of a DP. And so I don't have the luxury to say I quit, I left. And so I knew I stuck to the end. So I had to make it work no matter what or how or what happened within the set. Which is not the same with ACs or makeup people. They can say I quit, and it's just they are replaceable.
Was there collaboration there? Was Neil keen to take advice and listen to this advice?
Some days, yes. Most days, no. Most days it was his way because of the limitations. And a lot of times it was because there was no permits. I didn't see a single permit on the whole production. And we were shooting in, BMA areas like park, like not parks, but protected desert areas. We were shooting in the strip. We were shooting in neighborhoods, and there were no permits. Although we also didn't have contours and big lights and big 40 by 60 negative black things to control the sun. No, there was nothing of that. So there was really also no trucks. No, all the camera was in the back of my car, and then the lighting, very few lights. There were there was bounce boards, floppies to do negatives, and very minimal things. So our footprint was very small. The schedule was we all get together either at the dentist or a gas station or somewhere, and then we all got together, and then we went to the location.
Were you conscious of, or was there a discussion about how much footage you were filming? Because obviously the film's got a lot of stock footage in it. So were you kind of conscious of that? Was it a discussion as you were filming it about how much have we actually got enough film here for an actual release?
that was one of my concerns, and I believe the reason why the movie ended up having so much stock footage was because we didn't have permits to shoot on those places, and a lot of times it was just not permitted for the logistics of the. And in instances, for being a post-production person, it's a lot cheaper to buy a $80-90 piece of stock footage that spend $4,000 or $5,000 to be able to shoot it. I think that what the movie suffered in that case is that post wasn't conducted in the best way, meaning that the cut that I saw wasn't finalized post-wise and obviously wasn't color corrected. So there were a lot of stock footage that was 29.97. There was some stuff that was still PAL 25 frames. We shot at 24. So I can tell the jiggery on the image. So it was never really balanced. I don't know if the cut that you have, the final one, the one that got released, if it was treated anyway. One of the conversations that we did was that we shot 185, the aspect ratio, which is pretty much the frame that you have right now. I did talk to him about doing a 235 letterbox version. He didn't understand that, and I told him, look, let's shoot at 185. I can, if you give me the chance, I can show you in a couple of scenes how it will look in a 239, 235, 232, and then you can pick, because it makes it more cinematic, especially for the framing that he was doing, the lenses that we were using. And if I recall, he never really wanted something so wide. It wasn't like Lawrence of Arabia. And so it was a lot very more concise. So I told him that a 239 or 232 for that matter will help him condense that framing. And it was never done like that. So I don't know if maybe the editor really brought it up or he never brought it up. I don't think he understood me when I explained it to him. But that's part of the conversation that I remember on that first conversation asking him is like, okay, so if you had to relate to compare your movie to another movie, what movie would that be? And he didn't know. So as a DP, I never really had a homework to actually see. We talk about color, but he was like, no, shoot it. Whatever colors we get, we get. I was like, okay, but I can control that. I can, with wardrobe, with art department, we can make things more story-driven, color-wise. He didn't have any remarks in terms of that. Same thing with sound. And I remember Eduardo coming to me many times. He's like, I'm getting a lot of, because he didn't want actors to wear labs. And a lot of times I tell Eduardo, just lab him and don't tell him. And then I used to go to the actors, it's like, listen, we're going to put a lab because the camera is far away from you and a boom is not going to pick you up. But don't say anything to Neil. Don't worry about them. Don't, just come to us and so we handle it like that. But there were times that I couldn't do that. So that's why I remember on the cut that I saw, the sound was like very close, very far, very close, very far.
Did you ever have any kind of passionate movie conversations with him? Because you'd expect a director of film to be very passionate about the history of film.
No, actually, no, I don't remember having. I know that he always told me that he was a movie buff, that he loves movies. I remember asking him, what was your favorite movie on those first meetings that we had? He always got like, I might have to think about that because I've seen a lot of movies and I don't know which one will be my favorite one. But then he asked me, he goes, what's your favorite one? And I'm like, well, Cinema Paraiso, The Red Violin, Citizen King, Star Wars, all those. But he never really I never heard him say what's his favorite movie.
Was there any discussion with you about how he planned to distribute the film?
No, there was no discussion on how it's going to be edited.
Were you not invited to any of that kind of post-production stuff?
No, and I did tell them that actually at the time I always have a post-production facility, so I told them that I could help him editing. I told him if you give me the footage, I can start organizing it and at least put it onto. And no, he was very, and even the person that I know edited never edit with a hard drive with all the footage. They will give him like the scenes that he wanted to edit it, and then somebody else put it together. It might have been him that put it together. Okay. Same thing, I don't even know who had the music library or any rights or anything like that.
How do you feel your relationship with Neil was then during the shoot? I know when we spoke to Nick a few months ago, Nick kind of diplomatically kind of described it as there was a breakdown between the pair of you. Is that a fair assessment?
No, it wasn't a breakdown in terms of, like I say, I finished the project. It wasn't even a disagreement either. It was a lack of communication. It was like, it's very difficult to be with somebody that is collaborating. I mean, being a director, you had to delegate, but the delegation is a trust that you're going to do your job, but is your job based on your vision. I never really had that vision. So there was a lot of like, listen, you told me to point to, you telling me to point the camera that way and get that actor. That's what I'll do. It will be on focus. It will be whatever direction you, but it wasn't really a communication. It was in his mind, but it was never transcribed to me. You know, at the end of the day, and I say this a lot on editing, if you hire me as an editor and you don't let me edit, then all I am is a monkey punching the buttons that you want me to punch. I still get paid the same. It doesn't matter to me. It's like, you know, I mean, so at that point, it was like, fine, if you hire me for what I can do, but you don't let me do it, then just tell me what to do. And I'm just, you know, it would have cost you cheaper to get a PA and give him a camera and have it, you know, just because I know how to build a camera, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to do a good job. So it wasn't necessarily a breakdown. It was more of a, I know what you want me to do. I'll just do it. So
Did things get heated at times, though? Did you feel things got heated on set?
I don't know any production that it doesn't get heated. Again, you know, production it gets very sometimes get compared with war. Days change, things get heated, things got, you know, ADs, although there wasn't an AD, but ADs get like, how much time do we need? I need to release actors. I need to change locations. We have a company transport in 20 minutes, you know, whatever. And then as a DP, you always, being a DP, you have to, is a time management. You have to manage the days for how many pages you had to do. And with him, it was kind of like, I don't know either one. And a lot of times I was like, okay, you see that thing is setting. We don't have lights to compete with that thing. So as soon as he was like, well, if it gets dark, it gets dark. And then we stop shooting. I'm like, okay.
Nick said one of the tensest days was where Neil's got the vial of chemicals and he's pouring it into the water. And he just said things seemed to get a little bit tense on that day. Do you remember that day? Is that a day that sticks out in your memory at all?
Yeah, because again, you know, for what I understood on this, it was going to explain a lot in terms of what we'll be talking about, the guys wearing the black and the whole conspiracy and the whole thing. So this will explain a lot. And at that point, I wasn't really sure how to shoot it or how it was going to be portrayed within the story. And again, you know, I don't recall the scene on the movie or how it was edited, but I don't think that I remember the comment of the editor was like, it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't really answer the cliffhangers that we had from the beginning. And then he brought in a whole bunch of different and I remember there was a color shift between a couple of them, and we couldn't get the right one because we didn't have multiple ones. And I believe one of them gets broken on camera. If you see the movie, there's actually different ones that I couldn't handle because it was like, you know, usually you get, you know, wardrobe gets like, if you're wearing this shirt, there's like 4 of them just in case. Things like that, especially if it's glass, you get like dozens of them because on transportation, they will get broken. But no, he will show up and tell me, oh, this is what we're using, but that's not what we had last time. Oh yeah, cannot find it. I was like, oh, you know, Jesus, it's just like, okay. So that was probably what he was referring to. And then while I was actually shooting the whole thing, I remember he had a vision of the content of the vial had certain texture and color, but he never really played with it. And we didn't have an art department, so there was not a prop master doing that. It was him. So consistency was never the same. I remember having the color issue, but not necessarily for the color of the liquid, but the color of the vial.
Any other days that kind of just stick it to your mind or moments?
Yeah, pretty much from day one. I remember the day that we shot the sky. That was weird. I remember the day of the pool. That was weird. Again, you know, as a DP, I usually get the script. I get to break it down visually wise. And then that gets me familiarized with the atmosphere, the space, and the overall look of the movie. And then I meet with the director, and then we start talking. We go in scene by scene, and I start talking about lenses and locations and time of day and how long is it going to take. And then the AD gets involved, and then we go and mix it up and make it work. Nothing of that happened in this movie because I never got a full script. So yeah, there was a lot of the heat that happened on the set. It was for the lack of communication and details. At the end of the day, he got a movie release, and he has followers, and he has a cult, and he has, he has people that keep wanting to watch his movies, and that makes him do more movies. I was like, maybe I'm the one doing something wrong.
What was his actual justification for not giving his DP a script?
This is how I want to do it. I don't recall exactly what was his words, but it was something like in the terms of like, this is how we're doing it.
The pulsing. So what was the kind of the uncomfortableness around that scene? I presume there had been a conversation with her beforehand, has there, that she would be doing a nude scene that day?
I don't think it was, and I don't think she knew that there was going to be a male actor naked with her in the pool.
And what makes you think that? Was something said? Or is that just an
reaction? Yes, her reaction, and then the fact that he didn't know how to proper hide. And when I told him, it's like, you don't really need to. I mean, that thing looked weird. If he would have let it hang, it would have made more sense than what he did. And then he puts him in the water, so tape is not going to stay adhesed to the skin in water. So that thing was flopping, and the whole thing was coming off. And there was a female actor that didn't sign for that. So it was kind of like uncomfortable. And then we were trying to shoot it fast, and it wasn't, we had talked about it that I was going to have this dolly tracked over the water on the edge. And then I was going to do a very pan through the water as he's walking this way, getting in the water, and in a way where, it wasn't going to be, it was implied. But it never worked like that because it was too tense. They couldn't remember the lines. He was uncomfortable because, and I remember that shot on him laying on the water. We shot that when I think it was just me and him. The editor told me that once they were editing, there were some reshoots. I wasn't called for the reshoots. Somebody else come. And I think that scene had some reshoots. So I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't involved in the reshoots thing.
Was there any discussion about Cat when he's driving the car in Las Vegas, when he's got the people in the back, and we can see the car is clearly not moving?
Yeah, I told them that it's not a hard scene to do and to be able to move the car. But we didn't have a permit, so we couldn't have too much display. And we obviously couldn't put the camera outside the vehicle. But I told him I can sit in the passenger seat and shoot him driving and then the people on the back. And then if I need to shoot the person that was a passenger, then we can, just replace it with one of the actors. But he just wanted the control or the speed or having to do with that. So, and again, we couldn't just lower the camera enough not to see that the road was moving. But, I told him, like, we can shoot it very tight so depth of field will take over. But no, he wanted it those frames. So again, it was kind of like what I can do to what he wanted it.
Did you contribute to eating any of those cans of tuna?
No. Oh, no, hell no. That was, picture this. We're in the desert in June. So it's 100+ degrees in the desert. He brought a cooler with tuna, no ice. And that was the craft service. So that was the lunch.
You said that some people were a little bit annoyed with you about bringing them onto this film. What was for that reason, or how did you feel about that?
Well, yeah, because they trust me and they know me, and so if I tell them that I'm going to do this show and I ask them if they want to be part of it, they're going to say yes, just for the fact that we are a crew. But then when they start seeing the conditions of the production and the way that he treats people and the way that he wasn't handling right, that I wasn't able to do my job, then they were questioning. It's like, why did you bring us to this? And I tell them, listen, I don't know.
You, of course, were you've mentioned many times, Nick mentioned many times, you were the director of photography on this film, yet in the credits, you're down as camera operator. Is that something that offended you slightly when you saw that?
That title is not on my credit. It's not on my NDB. It's not on my. I don't think it's on my NDB. It's not on my. It's anywhere. I haven't used it, so I don't care what am I doing.
You're down as camera operator on Internet Movie Database for Double Down.
Really?
Yeah, and that's how you're listed in the credits of the film as well. Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if it's because he doesn't really know what my position was in the film. It doesn't hurt me at all. I don't think that job will get me higher in any other production. So
why do you think after this film he started to cut down his crews so much?
I imagine because it was probably easier for him to control. I imagine because, I don't know, he burned so many bridges that I'm sure he called around and people just didn't want to work with. He never called me back. I think he felt like I wasn't going to. If he would have called me, I would say, I will consider it, but we had to work differently. Give me a full script. Let me do my job. But I don't think he wanted to have that conversation.
When did you become aware of the cult of Neil Breen?
No, I actually never saw another movie of him or before that. And I remember the editor told me, he's like, no, he released it and he got distributed it. And apparently there's people that he got an award in some festival that is mainly artsy festival or hippie festival. And I was like, okay, good for him. But then I have full hope for my movies. I mean, I worked on Ransom, on Ocean's 11, on Ocean's 13, on, movies that are audiences. There's a limit to these type of audiences. And so I was really not interested in terms of, I don't know, but it didn't even cause curiosity for me to go and even inquire about it.
And where did this lead you in your career?
Let's see, what did I do? I think there was a movie called Jay that we shot in Vegas. So I don't remember before or after doing any type of movies like that, like artsy films, like the ones that I used to do in film school, or the ones that you kind of learn on. But no, I went into normal filmmaking from that, and then I moved to LA, and then in LA and I remember I got connected with a producer, and we shot Lethal Weapon 4, the scene in the highway with the built house that they were driving. That highway was being built at the time, and we shot that film before the highway was open. And then with that same producer, I got to go to Japan to shoot Tom Cruise Last Samurai. And so I went to, I didn't go back to any of those type of films.
So, was it water or gasoline? I think it might have been a bit of both. Thank you to Andres for talking to me and being such a great guest. I've actually been really surprised as to how these chats with crew can often be even more illuminating and fascinating as ones with cast. Like Emily, Andres is on LinkedIn, or you can have a look at some of his credits on the Internet Movie Database. Look, I'm sorry, I have to say it. Please subscribe, share, rate, all those things, and then you'll not only be notified when a new episode is released, but you'll be helping the exposure of this show greatly. Also, if I can just have 10 seconds of your time now, go and search 60 Second Cinema on YouTube. It's a new weekly movie review show where I, myself, whiz through the latest releases in just a single minute. It's a great way to get a quick thumbs up or thumbs down on new movies and maybe discover a few you weren't aware of. Next episode, it'll be our third detour into a deep dive on a Breen film. This time it's Twisted Pair, and I'll be joined by Emmy Award-winning writer of The Daily Show, Dan McCoy. I would actually also like to ask you for some help, if possible, and this would be a way that you could be involved in the podcast. I am aware that maybe you're listening every week and you think to yourself, oh, why didn't he ask this, or why didn't he ask that? Well, I was thinking about maybe for an upcoming show doing a kind of hodgepodge, putting together all our guests we've had so far, and maybe just sending a few follow-up questions their way. So if there's anything you want to know at all, anything you want to ask our previous guests, please let me know. Ask the questions, pop it in the comments of the YouTube videos. You could pop it on the Reddit, the Neil Breen Reddit, where I post. Or you could always email me at bitemythumbtv@hotmail.com. Then hopefully I'll put these questions to our previous guests, and we'll have a little show where we hear those responses. Before I sign off, we've just got a little bit more information about Breenfest 2025. Some of you asking where it'll be held. We're currently looking at somewhere in the Nevada desert. There'll be all kinds of live events for you to enjoy, such as tiger wrestling, computer hacking tips, a mental asylum inmate flash mob, a couple of sporting events such as races running up and down desert hills. You'll be able to do that either on your own or whilst pushing an OAP in a wheelchair. And we'll also have some guest appearances. Russ from London will be leading a tuna eating contest. Clothing designer Gemma from Texas will be giving out some vital tips on how to look good when not wearing a bra. And UK relationships advisor Anthony Roberts will be telling you how to spice up your love life by pretending to be a home intruder. Tickets are expected to sell out fast.
You've been listening to My Scene with Breen, a Neil Breen podcast and a Bite My Thumb production. Your host was Neil Knight. Bite My Thumb can be followed on Twitter or X at Bite My Thumb, on Twitch at twitch.tv/bitemythumb, on YouTube at bitemythumbtv, or on Letterboxd at bitemythumb. All music was written and created by Cotsplays. He can be followed on Twitch at twitch.tv/Cotsplays, where every Saturday morning at 12 p.m. he'll be making live music. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and rate this episode.